Praise be to God, there is no other God except God. There are two basic ways to own wealth. The first way is individual wealth, or what they would call in business sole proprietorship, which means that only one individual owns that wealth. The second way is partnership or corporation, where two or more individuals own the same wealth. Basically, two or more individuals pooling the wealth together. In verse 38-24, the Quran tells us that the pooled wealth increases the chances of committing injustice towards one another. However, the Quran allows pooled wealth, and it also tells us in the same verse that it is possible to have pooled wealth and still be reasonably righteous if both people are good believers. And just like wealth can be owned individually or pooled together, in the same way, in theory, the couples who get married can own wealth individually or have it pooled together. However, whether they own it individually or whether it is pooled together depends more on the outside circumstances of the society and the system within which they got married. Now, for financial purposes only, if we think of marriage like a company or business, then in the past the man would own the business while the woman would be like an employee within that business. She would get her due, but in the end, if the business succeeded, the merits of that success would belong to the husband, and if the business failed, the blame for the failure again would be taken by the husband, but the wife would take no financial risks in marriage. She would get the same salary, so to speak, regardless if the business is going well or not. Now, in democracies, when a couple get married, in the official state-registered marriages, then the agreement automatically implies that that so-called business is a partnership and not a sole proprietorship. So in a democracy, because of the nature of the agreement, when a woman gets married, she is not like an employee in a company, but a co-owner or partner of that company, called marriage. And both methods are allowed. We can be an employee in a company, which is fine and allowed, and also we can be partners in a company, which is again fine and allowed. However, in a democracy, in state-registered marriages, this second method automatically happens, which is fine and allowed according to the Quran. This means that when you get married in state-registered marriages, with official signed documents, that automatically means that you have also agreed to pool all the wealth together. And since the believers are required to keep their agreements, that means that you truly do agree to pool the wealth together with your partner when you get married. And the Quran allows this. However, because the wealth is pooled according to the rules of the democratic states, as with all democracies, some of those rules are fair and some of those rules of pooling the wealth are not fair. And in this Friday sermon, I tell you how to fix the unfair parts, so that we can use the benefits of the democracies for marriage purposes in this case, but at the same time continue to remain fair to each other by adjusting some of those unfair parts when it comes to couples' finances. But before I do that, let me just tell you that it's impossible to be completely fair when you pool the wealth together. Because just like in a real pool of water, if two people fill the pool together with buckets of water, once the water gets mixed, it's impossible to trace exactly which drop of water in that pool came exactly from which person, and so it's impossible to completely separate it correctly again. This is why, in that case, we should try to approximate. To come up with that approximation of how much each couple deserves or contributed to that common pool of wealth, which they share together, the democratic states use 4 principles. And these are principles, not laws, because they are approximations. But it's better to approximate than not approximate at all. Now, the 3 principles which are used in democracies when it comes to couples' finances, and which are also correct according to the Quran, are: Principle 1, the amount of wealth which one partner earned before marriage should go to that partner only if they divorce. Principle 2, the amount of wealth which one partner inherited before or during marriage should go to that partner only if they divorce. Principle 3, spending is assumed to be commonly shared, 50-50, by both partners. And now Principle 4. Principle 4 deals with what the partners earn during marriage from income or other types of earnings. According to democratic laws, whatever one partner earns during marriage, it belongs 50-50 to both partners. And this principle is not completely fair. It's partly fair, but not completely, because it partly goes against the Quranic verses which say that every person is responsible for his or her own deeds, and everyone should be paid exactly for what they did. So if one partner works 8 hours every day and brings money into the marriage, and the other partner does not, if they divorce, it does not make sense to pretend as if though they both brought an equal amount of money into the marriage through earnings. Unfortunately, to correct this, people sign prenuptial contracts, which actually make the issue unfair in the opposite direction. They might split the wealth according to how much each partner earned, but that is again not true according to the Quran, because verse 485 says that whomever mediates a good deed receives a share of it. So if one partner works and the other partner is there to just support him or her emotionally, he or she also deserves part of the earnings. For example, when the partner who worked comes home, he or she will vent some of that stress and hard work to the other partner, and also the other partner who did not work has to deal with it and has to adjust to the life to make it fit the other partner's work and so on. So it is neither true that the partner who earns the money deserves it all, but it is also not true that both partners deserve a 50-50 share of one partner's earnings. And the truth in this case is in between. If we take all the Quran into account, Principle 4 should be like this. Principle 4. The amount of wealth which one partner earned during marriage, if they divorce, 66% of it should go towards that partner and 33% towards the other partner. And also vice versa, for whatever the other partner earned during marriage. 66% should go towards that other partner and 33% towards the first partner. And the logic behind it is this. First, we have to understand that we are not robots who work only when on the job. We are human beings. When we work for 8 hours, we must recharge our human batteries for another 8 hours. So even though we are not on the job location during the other 8 hours, it is necessary part of the preparation for work to rest and do other things for the other 8 hours. So because we are human beings, we get paid for 8 hours, but in reality, we are getting paid for the whole 16 hours of the day during which we are awake, since all of it should happen for us to be able to do the work. You can think of it as 8 hours of preparation and another 8 hours of actual work. So in reality, because we are social beings with human needs, we are really getting paid for the whole 16 hours of our day when we receive our salary. And the other partner is also part or present during 8 of those 16 hours. So the other partner is actually part of half of whatever the working partner needs to be able to do his or her work. So this means that when one partner is employed and the other is not, they are actually both directly or indirectly affected by it. But one of them is affected by it for 16 hours, while the non-working partner is affected by it only for 8 hours. So the non-working partner actually deserves about half as much as the working partner from the earnings of the working partner. And of course, this is an approximation, but it is a much better approximation than the 50-50 approximation of the democratic states or the 100-0 approximation of the prenuptial contracts. So the best approximation in this case is 66-33 and not 50-50 or 100-0. So each partner deserves 66.6% of what he or she earns, while the other partner deserves the other 33.3% of it. Now, inside the marriage, as long as the partners are married, it is all shared and it should not be split like that. And they should not think of it like that. All the wealth of married couples is shared or pooled wealth in cases of couples who have registered their marriages in democratic states. So during marriages, no working couple should remind the other couple of how much they deserve. It's all shared while being married. However, if the partners end up divorcing, at that moment of divorce, this issue, which was not important at all during the marriage, then it becomes important. Because then they have to split their pooled wealth, and if they have to split it, they should split it fairly. So to help the submitters implement these 4 principles, if the couple have to divorce, I prepared this calculator, this Excel file. I attached it in the email when I sent this Friday sermon to the submitters. And then whenever a new submitter joins us in the future and needs it, they can get it from one of the earlier submitters who have it in their email. So this is the calculator, and it uses those 4 principles which I mentioned to split the wealth. By the way, you can see here that I wrote that you should not use this calculator if one of the partners has taken a loan without the knowledge of the other partner, or if a prenup was signed which diverges from this. That prenup should not have been signed in the first place, but you cannot go back in time and correct it, unless the other partner also agrees to correct it now. Anyway, let me show you some examples how the calculator works. So we have to fill all the yellow cells here in this first table. And now let's imagine that John and Lisa are divorcing. We write their names here. And let's imagine that the net worth of John at the beginning of marriage was 0. And let's say also that Lisa's wealth also was 0. Let's also assume that during marriage, John received no inheritance, so 0. And Lisa also received no inheritance, so 0 inheritance. And let's say that during marriage, let's say that the marriage lasted 20 years, and that John's salary during marriage was about $100,000 a year, which means that during the whole marriage for 20 years he earned $2 million. Now let's say that Lisa did not work and she only earned $0. Now let's say that from those $2 million they saved $1 million. So we write the net worth of both of them together at the end of marriage, so $1 million. Now at the end, John should, when they divorce, John should get from those $1 million which they have, either saved or they have it in assets like a house or cars or whatever they have it together until then. But when they divorce, they should split these $1 million into $833,000 for John and $166,000 for Lisa. However, let's say that Lisa actually did not have $0 at the beginning of marriage, but let's say that she actually had $50,000 at the beginning. Let's say that she started working earlier. So now she actually gets more compared to earlier. She gets $191,000. Or let's say that during marriage, Lisa received an inheritance of $300,000. So in this case, John gets $658,000 out of that $1 million, and Lisa gets $341,000. Or let's say that John actually, because he had a very high salary, but let's say that to do that he actually had to finish college, which meant that he was in student debt when he got married. So let's say that he started his marriage with a debt of $100,000. So net worth of minus $100,000. So in this case, John gets about $600,000 and Lisa gets about $400,000. Or now let's say that Lisa also worked. Let's say that she during that time she earned $1 million during those 20 years. Now Lisa has $558,000 if they divorce from that $1 million. And John gets $441,000 from that $1 million which they have at the end of the marriage. So these two red numbers here show what John and Lisa should get after you fill all these yellow cells. However, in some cases, even though you know these numbers, it might not be suitable for you to split the wealth in that exact way, because sometimes it's just hard to split a house or things like that. So you might decide that one partner might get some more than they deserve or less than they deserve. However, they will agree to compensate for it later, gradually through monetary payments. And in that case, if what they should have done and what they actually did is different, then they should actually also use this second table. In this second table, they write exactly what they got instead of what they should have gotten. So let's say that John should have gotten $441,000, but let's say that he actually got only $300,000, which means that Lisa must have received $700,000 from that $1 million. So even though they did not split it exactly as they should have, they know exactly how much one partner should give to the other so that they become equal. In this case, this number is how much partner A owes to partner B to correct for the fact that the wealth was not split according to what each partner deserves. In this case, this number here means that Lisa should give John $141,000 after she received $700,000. So this is how the calculator works. And by the way, this is so important that you must turn it into a legal contract after marriage. Someone might ask, how come it was not obligatory in the past to sign this contract, but now it has become obligatory? Have you invented something new? Well, democratic states did not exist when the Quran was revealed, which means that people got married in religious marriages. And in the religious marriages, the unfairness, if it happened towards the end of the marriage. And that's when people try to fix it with agreements. But in democratic states, in order to prevent some of that potential unfairness towards the end of the marriage, basically to make the marriage safer, they actually have resorted to always committing a small unfairness at the beginning of marriage, at the moment of marriage. At the moment of marriage, state-registered marriages are a little bit unfair towards the partner who works or towards the partner who has a bigger salary. And we as believers should fix that unfairness soon after it happens. So we don't sign a prenup, a contract before marriage, because the Quran tells us not to be afraid of injustice before it happens. But after it happens, then we must correct it. So after we register our marriages in democratic states, that's when some small injustice happens. And then we should sign another contract in the following months after marriage to correct it. It's fair enough if you sign it within a few months after marriage, because finances don't really change much from earnings within a few months. So what every submitter should do within a few months after he or she gets married is this. They should sit down together and evaluate their net worth for each of them as it was at the moment of marriage. One of them should send this calculator to the other partner attached in an email. Then they go to the notary or lawyer, whomever does that job legally in that state, and then they sign a legal contract which says, this was the net worth of each partner at the moment of marriage. And in case we ever have to divorce in the future, we will use the calculator which was sent by this partner to this partner through email on this date. We will use that exact calculator to evaluate how much each partner should get if we ever divorce. The contract should also say that no partner will seek alimony in case of divorce, except for what the other partner voluntarily might decide to give. Because according to the Quran, alimony is applicable only when the women are prohibited to work themselves after divorce. But women in democracies are free to work, so the correct alimony for them is $0. If they are really poor after divorce, then there is obligatory charity for them, or state assistance, but no need for alimony for a woman which is not prohibited from working. However, a divorced submitter may seek fair and reasonable child support outside of this calculator, which is another issue. This calculator does not cover that.